Welcome to the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, where it is never too early for fantasy football. My name is Jeff.
And I'm Alex.
Hey, Alex, how's it going today?
It's going well. Another day to talk about football news.
It's the game that we love. The schedule is done. We did our schedule recap show. We hope that everyone that's listening has their road trips planned to go watch their favorite teams on the road. I know I have a lot of friends that like to go pick out a Bills game and they like to pick out a destination to go watch a Bills game. It's part of the fun of the schedule release. As always, thank you for downloading, listening, liking, and commenting on our podcast videos. Please subscribe to us on the socials. We are on Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter with the handle at N2EFantasy. Alex, what do we have on today's show?
Today we have a prominent football game maybe coming back. We have a long time suspended wide receiver who is very prominent in fantasy circles may be getting back from suspension if this particular corner has his say. We have NFL GMs talking about Zeke. We have Joe Burrow possibly working on an extension. We have a Washington Commanders sale. And then we have some other contract news to talk about and potential quarterbacks that may or may not be coming back into the league. So we've got a few things to talk about. And why don't we start, Jeff, with the first item of the day, which is the NCAA football conference and programs are now allowing EA Sports to have players' names and likeness on the new video game, which I believe is coming out next season, not this season.
It's been a very, very long time. Almost 10 years if I'm not mistaken. This is a favorite game of folks that used to play sports games, and it's kind of a urban myth at this point because when it was discontinued, I know a lot of people are upset with it. There were even iterations where you could have players that you were playing with on NCAA and you could upload the file into Madden and continue to use those players into Madden. So I don't know if any of these features will continue, but I do remember that, and that was really fun because you kind of got to play all the way through college and then all the way through the pros with the same players. It's kind of like the complete football experience, and I'm pretty excited about it. The only thing I obviously have questions about is EA. They've been very lazy with Madden in the recent years. Does that mean they'll be that way with NCAA, or does this mean that we'll get a whole new rework interface across both platforms? Because obviously, if you're going to update one, you might as well update the other. Have you ever played NCAA?
I did. It was one of my favorite games. I really liked a lot of sports games, especially growing up. And I really enjoyed taking over a school's program and doing all the recruiting stuff, building a contender, a dynasty, and then uploading all of the draft classes into Madden when Madden came out. And I really enjoyed the two. And you're right, EA has the last several years, their product has gone down as far as Madden, so hopefully they're in a point where they're trying to get more competitive and stay upright as a business and actually have innovative and better playing styles and better franchise modes and stuff like that. So I'm excited that it's coming back. I am cautiously optimistic that it's going to be at least enjoyable. Don't want to get my hopes too high because it is EA, but I'm excited that it's back and it's long overdue. And I'm glad that you'll actually play with the real players rather than made up players and people who don't actually exist. So that's going to be interesting.
Absolutely. I know EA has admitted that they have been a little lazy lately and they do want to revamp everything. Their current deal with the NFL does for exclusivity goes through May of 2026. So that gets them what, three more iterations currently? Maybe the NFL will start looking for a new video game partner after that. We all know
Potentially.
that there's the myth of a video game that came out one year. It was like 2K05 or something like that with Terrell Owens on the cover. But And that was the last year another manufacturer was allowed to release a video game with using NFL players. So a little competition might be a good thing here.
I know EA still hasn't, as far as I know, re-upped with FIFA for the rights going forward. Their rights ended December 31st of 2022. So I think they're trying to take over the NCAA game to trying to get their foot out in another sports franchise. So they are in a bind. I think they have to try to be good. So that's just all I
Yeah,
had to say.
that's actually kind of crazy too. And EA kind of really relies on those exclusive deals. So the company look completely different here in the next few years. But we have
Yeah.
the Steelers, Cam Hayward. He wants Martavis Bryant's suspension lifted. What are your thoughts on Martavis Bryant? Have you forgot about him? Because I kind of did.
Yeah, my first thought when seeing that on the on the notes for this episode was he's still suspended. He was someone that I remember was highly regarded in the fantasy realm because he was a very explosive player. And I remember that I think it was Brad Evans from Yahoo Sports famously drafted him like really, really early in a three sport fantasy draft, and it didn't work out for him, obviously. So I don't know what a lifted suspension would do because I don't know if he would even be competitive or be able to play in the league right now. I think it would just be a nice gesture, but I'm still surprised he's suspended. I don't know how long that's been, Jeff. How long has it been?
It has been since the 2018 season. He was suspended indefinitely for substance abuse, but at 31 right now, really, what's the point? What is the point? A wide receiver is past their prime at that point. Do I think he should be suspended still? No, but do I think that he should be in the NFL? Probably also no, although the last place where he competed was the XFL, so he is staying somewhat in football shape, but I don't know if he's in NFL shape.
Yep. But someone else who might not be in NFL shape, NFL GM believes that Zeke Elliott has lost his step and could be left on the market for a while. So I know, Jeff, that you've had him on your fantasy teams as recent as last year. I don't think he's been that effective, but he's been relatively effective points wise for you. Do you think he's lost a step? Do you think he's still going to be worthwhile in fantasy? You think a team actually wants him? What do you think about Zeke?
I have a lot of thoughts about Zeke. Zeke is still on my roster in one of my dynasty leagues, and while it is likely that I do cut him, I have not made a official stance on that yet. But he was still an efficient, effective fantasy running back last season. But I can see why teams wouldn't want to bring in the aging veteran. It's always possible that a player like this gets scooped up later in the season for a playoff run because we do know that running backs wear down towards the end of the season, and we've all been in those fantasy playoff like matchups where we're starting like a Craig Reynolds or someone off the street last week because that's the person the team signed and are going to start them that week. So why not have a fresh and hopefully in shape Zeke Elliott for a playoff team that you can kind of ride down the stretch? Do I think that he can compete in 17 games and not have the backing of Jerry Jones? No, I don't think that this year.
Yeah, I don't think he's that great anymore, and I think he would just be a rotation back, maybe as high as the second string, but probably like the third guy in a lot of teams' running back corral. I agree he has lost a step. I agree with that GM. I also think though that someone will eventually take a chance and bring him in to their locker room. So I don't think his playing days are done, but I think his fantasy RB1 days are over as far as I can see.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. So, I know that we've talked about this a lot offline, but Joe Burrow is working on a contract extension, And Joe Burrow would like to keep the Bengals core together. And I assume when he says Bengals core, that means him, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins. I know we have very differing opinions about this. Do you think that they could commit 100 million a year to a quarterback and two wide receivers?
I think that they can keep all three players. I don't know if the cap hit would be 100 million for all three combined. I know that you're convinced that it will probably be around that number, and it might very well be, but I think that they could stagger the contract extensions to an extent where they can make it work. Granted, it would be challenging, but Jeff, they have potentially 200 million in cap space in 2015. So if they play it right, they might be able to make it work. That's just my opinion, and I think that's what they're aiming for. You and I have also talked about that potentially they have Higgins play out this year, maybe franchise tag him and then trade Higgins the next year. So that's also a possibility. But I think it makes sense that Joe Burrow wants his two top options to stay with him. So we'll see how it plays out. We don't quite know how feasible it will end up being. I think there's a chance. I know that you think that that is not likely.
All I'm saying is I've never seen it before. There's been no successful teams that have paid a quarterback and two wide receivers top of the market value. And I know that there's salary cap finagling that can go on, but if Higgins is paid on average 25 million per year over 4 years or how many ever void years that they put on the end of that, that is, even if the cap hits really low, that gets pushed to future years. And we got to assume Burrow is here for another like 10 to 15 years. So we can't be so short-sighted of kicking that can down the road and then it having an effect in the back end of Joe Burrow's career. So it's not like he's at the end of his career and like trying to fight for one more title. He's still so early in his career that kicking that can right now could be devastating in about 7 years, and he may have nobody around him. It might be a ghost town around him, but he'll still be with the Bengals.
I don't know. The answer is almost always 7 additional void years. That's how you make it work.
I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you. And then please tell me that you are going to be the next owner of the Washington Commanders.
I looked in my couch cushions and I flipped them up, and I was a couple pennies shy, so I didn't win the bid. But it's looking like Josh Harris's group is the winner in the sale agreement. So I don't know much about him, but hopefully they change the culture. Jeff, what do you think about Josh Harris purchasing them?
So I have a lot of questions. So this deal is not going to become official this month like it was rumored earlier. They're still vetting the minority owners. So like not Josh Harris, but anyone that's like a minority stake owner in the group, they're still vetting them to make sure that they don't have anything seriously wrong with them and it pops up later and it scars the NFL. I think that this gets done over the summer though. I think this is done well before the season starts. I think the question is like the Commanders are only 2 years old. If you're a new owner coming in and you really don't like the name of this team, do you go through another name change process potentially?
I think I would take it back to the football club. That's what I would do. I think that's the best name.
Let's go. And then my other question is what does this mean for quarterback Sam Howell and head coach Ron Rivera?
Sam Howell and Ron Rivera, I don't know that they will be there the next season. Sam Howell's going to get a chance to start. Ron Rivera's going to get a chance to see if they can get a decent amount of wins, a respectable amount. I think it's likely that both of them are gone or both of them are replaced by the next year. Okay.
Ron Rivera, funny enough, went through this in Carolina, and they moved on from him as soon as the new ownership team came in. And then we don't know what Sam Howell is. Like I don't think anyone knows what Sam Howell is. He had one start last year. He looks a little small to me, but obviously there's Bryce Young in the league now, so he might be a giant now.
Yeah, we'll see if he can start the whole year. I have a sneaking suspicion that they might be one of the teams interested in Ryan Tannehill at some point. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
I know you have Ryan Tannehill going to all these different teams, so we'll see what happens. I still think he's going to be a Titan, and I think they're going to compete for a playoff spot.
I think there's two realistic teams for Tannehill, and one is Washington, one is Atlanta. I don't think outside of that, I don't really see that much of a market for him.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. So, speaking of market, do you think that there's a market for Quinnen Williams? He removed the New York Jets from his Twitter bio. Usually, that means that they're locked into some contract negotiations that aren't going well.
I know that they're clearing up some cap space. I don't know if they'll get to the 25 to 30 million he's supposedly asking for, which makes sense because he's comparing it to the defensive tackle that the Titans just signed. So maybe he can get that money. I don't know if there's a trade market from other teams who are willing to spend that money. We'll see how this works out. I ultimately think he's going to stay a Jet. I just think he's a little bit frustrated and doesn't want to completely blow his chance at getting his money by saying anything negative. But he did remove the Jets and put dot 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 as the team he plays for. So not a great situation.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that like the new age temper tantrum? Like when you're unhappy, you just remove stuff off of your social media. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Clearly, I think his best spot is to be on the team just because I just where the team is going. But I don't know if they ever get to the spot of the 25 to 30 million per year for a defensive player. That is bordering on middle of the road quarterback money, and they touch the ball every snap on offense. I just don't know if he's going to find that robust market. And if he does find that robust market, I don't know if now, after free agency, after the draft, is the best time to find that robust market to get that contract. Now, I know they can play with the cap. We've already talked about that, but eventually that 25 to 30 comes to roost on some payroll some year, whether it's 7 void years. At the end of the day, I'm hoping that they get this worked out because the Jets have a chance to actually be a decent team this year and come close to and maybe even exceed doubling their wins from last year. I think that it's in everyone's best interest to get this done because we don't know how long they have Aaron Rodgers for. And to have the best defense in the division would be the best way to actually go about beating the Dolphins and the Bills. And even Belichick, is still a hard defensive coach to play against. But the Jets last year had 7 wins. I don't think they'll get to 14 wins this year, but I could see them getting to 10, 11, 12 and coming close to that doubling number.
Especially if they have a good defensive tackle signed. So
They better. Speaking of unsigned right now, though, Saquon Barkley remains unsigned on the franchise tag with not the Jets, but the team that's right across the hall from them, the Giants. The rumor is that Saquon Barkley rejected a $14 million per year deal. Now there are some disputes out there that this could have been an 11 to 12 million dollar per year deal, but there's another rumor out there that he wants to get up to Christian McCaffrey's 16 million per year. What are your thoughts on this, and where do you kind of see the Saquon Barkley thing going?
it's tough for them right now because it doesn't make sense to pay a running back that kind of money, but at the same time, he is their offense at the moment until until the wide receivers can bring something to the table. So they're in a bind whether or not they should pay him this kind of money. I don't think they should pay him that money. I don't think he's worth Christian McCaffrey's money. Christian McCaffrey is a special back. I think that Barkley is going to have to accept less or play on the franchise tag and then see how they feel next season. And there's a good chance that Barkley may not even get 14 million next season. So I think I think that they should just stand firm. Will they? Probably not. They'll probably cave, is my guess. So
I have a lot of theories with running backs in the NFL. One of them is your most value comes with the team that drafted you. If Barkley were to leave the Giants, he probably wouldn't be viewed the same or utilized the same by another organization. If we look at the past of this, like Le'Veon Bell, who left Pittsburgh and went to the Jets, like his career took a dramatic turn in usage and the way that they used him. There's no team that's going to look at you like the team that drafted you. Now, there are some exceptions to this rule. Like if we look at like Christian McCaffrey, he was traded. He was actually signed to a second deal by his original club, and they traded him last season when they determined that they weren't going to be a competitive team. But that doesn't mean that they didn't see the value still in Christian McCaffrey and the amount that San Francisco gave up to get him. It's different than signing a free agent on the off the street as well. So I think that Barkley's best career move is to figure a way to be with the Giants long term because as I've said, like a team unless a team's going to give up draft capital, no team's going to look at you the way that your initial team that drafted you is going to look at you, and they're not going to be as productive as that first team. We'll see what happens. Running back value is much lower than it was even 2 or 3 seasons ago, and it does seems like this ebbs and flows like on like 5-year cycles. Like every 5 years, like a running back will be paid like an astronomical amount. Then the floor drops out of the salaries again for running backs. So if I were making a prediction right now, I would say that the next person to like get paid at the running back position is going to be someone like Bijan Robinson that was drafted this year. And when his deal comes up, Atlanta is not going to want to sacrifice the top 10 pick that they put into him, and they're going to resign him. But very rarely does a running back return value on a second contract. Like you have to be a out of this world running back to return value on a second contract. And the Giants would be very smart to stand firm with Barkley because I think the Giants will be more okay if Barkley walks at some point than Barkley will be.
yep, I think that they should have signed him earlier and franchise tagged Daniel Jones, but they caved on the Daniel Jones contract. Someone else who's looking for a contract in the quarterback position, Carson Wentz, is now willing to accept a backup role. Do you think that he gets a backup role somewhere, Jeff? You're one of his cheerleaders. Do you think he'll get a starting job somewhere? What do you see for Carson Wentz coming?
So Carson said that he is open to anything. So that's starting, backup, pretty much any role. Now, there are a few teams out there that really could use a strong backup quarterback that have a superstar quarterback in place right now, which will stop the chance and the crowd if that first quarterback faltered at all to go to Carson Wentz. So the worst thing that you could do in this situation is put a Carson Wentz behind like a Desmond Ritter or a Sam Howell or someone that's not proven, because the moment that that quarterback fails or starts to stumble a little bit, there's going to be calls for Carson. Now, I would rather see him go to a team like behind Josh Allen or behind Patrick Mahomes, somewhere where there's already a superstar established. Therefore, there won't be calls for Carson. And then, if anything happened to one of those superstar quarterbacks, Carson is capable of coming in and stringing together 2 or 3 starts and being competent doing it.
I think the Chiefs would be the best situation for him. He could almost wear the same Washington outfit that he wore when he signed with Washington. That just makes too much sense to have someone like him back up Patrick Mahomes. I don't know what their backup situation is at the top of my head. I know that their longtime backup, I think, is officially retired,
Henny,
so they could use a veteran.
absolutely, yeah. Henny retired as you were
Hitting.
stating.
Yeah. So I think that is the best situation. I agree that you don't want him necessarily behind a really young quarterback that you want to see if they have anything, because that could threaten that player's growth, potentially cut short their trial in the regular season. Another situation he could potentially go to is maybe like Jacksonville. Back up Trevor Lawrence. I can't remember if Peterson was there when Wentz was drafted. So those would be like the two ideal spots for him because he's not threatening the starters there, and he is a reasonable enough backup to win a spot start here and there on a good team.
Yeah, and I think the last thing that I'll add to Wentz here, if he went to someone like Andy Reid, that is someone that could really restore his confidence and potentially get him back into this league as a starter at some point because he needs to go reset. He needs to go somewhere where there's no pressure on him for a year, and he also needs to be with someone that is known to be a quarterback whisperer.
Speaking of quarterbacks, we have Tom Brady reportedly in talks to become a minority owner in the Las Vegas Raiders. What do you think about that? Are you officially going to take him off your ranks, off your board entirely?
No, sir. The ink is not dry yet on that contract. The rumor is that he would still like to fulfill his Fox deal. I'm still not 100% sure that he's done playing. I know we both know that like if you're in talks to become a minority owner, is that for right now or is that for a time somewhere in the future? So like just because they're in talks to do it doesn't mean that the ink is going to be dry on the paper before the season starts. Could he still go play for the Dolphins for a year and then go be the Raiders owner in a year? Anything is possible. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think he could play again? Will he play again?
If he signs this deal, he is not allowed to play according to the league constitution. I think if he's going to own a team anywhere, he should become a minority owner in the Patriots and then become Bill Belichick's boss because I think that would be hilarious. I can see him wanting to get into ownership into teams and spend that Fox money in that regard. I know that we both know that Davis is one of the poorer NFL owners and does not have enough revenue from that team to really spend on players long term. So he could be looking for other revenue sources, like someone to buy into the team. Ultimately, I think that Tom Brady's playing days are done. I don't think he's going to play again at this stage. I am officially off that train and I'm waiting to be proven wrong at some point in the season.
Oh, I just don't think he ever gets the itch to be done, and the itch will always be there. What happens if, say, Patrick Mahomes goes out week 4? Andy Reid calls up Tom Brady. Do you want to come play for the Chiefs here and lead us to a Super Bowl? I don't know, man. It'd just be so. I know that's an outlandish scenario, but it'd be so hard to say no. Be so hard for him to pass on. You're probably right. This probably is the end of his playing career, but I'm not ready to remove him from my sheets yet because the last time that I did that, I got burnt and he came back almost immediately after I did that. So I'm standing pat.
The scenario to me that is the most likely that brings him out of retirement is the 49ers, all three quarterbacks go down, and they need a veteran quarterback to lead them to the promised land, and Tom Brady gets to play for his childhood team. I think that is the only scenario at this point where he will play.
You could see that same thing with the Dolphins, though. Tua gets hurt.
Yeah,
and they're heading
I
towards
could
the
see that
playoffs with
too.
Tyreek and Waddle. Doesn't take three Tuas to get hurt for him to get into that. So I
That's
think he
very
has a lot
true.
of plays. I think it's interesting that both of those coaches are on the Shanahan tree. And I think it's interesting that last year, I think there's rumors out there that the Niners called Philip Rivers to see if he would come out of retirement down the stretch. They have a track record of calling and trying to figure it out.
Yep, something to keep an eye on as we get through this season.
For sure, for sure. It'll be
And
a really good storyline.
the last item of the day, Jeff, do you want to pour one out for one of your fallen homies from Preston Williams?
You said pour one out. This is for the folks that are
That's
watching
right.
on video.
That's right.
Preston Williams, released by the Carolina Panthers today. He was a pseudo star with the Dolphins his first season. And I know dynasty owners, dynasty lovers, they were very big on Preston Williams, and I was one of those owners, and I bought in really early with the Dolphins. And then he came to Carolina, and I was like, "Oh, Carolina really doesn't have much. We're going to be able to play him." He is now a free agent, so he now gets another shot to officially like go on the market, see if there's anyone out there that wants him. I don't think it'll be that likely. He is only 26 years old. He's a 6'4" wide receiver. So he's got height. He's still got age on his side. He really hasn't played much the last 2 years, which I think is actually going to hurt him more than help him. Actually, Pro Football Focus has him listed at 6'5". So either he shrunk an inch or Wikipedia is wrong at the 6'4" height, but he's a big body wide receiver. It doesn't seem like there were too many of those drafted this year out of the NFL draft, at least not high. So you would think someone like Preston Williams would be highly sought after on the free agent market, but the fact that he wasn't traded and he was just cut makes me think that there isn't going to be that big of a market for him. He's just going to be that myth of a wide receiver that never panned out. Now, I know you were a huge fan of Preston Williams as well, Alex.
No, I didn't even recognize the name. He's never on my radar, not in Dynasty, not in anything. He never really put up stats over sustained time period. It was like a couple games he put up some big stats, but I think he goes to the XFL. He has a chance to rehab some value after a season there potentially do the Hakeem Butler route because Hakeem Butler went to the XFL after he fizzled out with Arizona, and now he was signed to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So he could follow a similar mold and get back in the league that way. Or maybe someone has been a long time admirer, just like you, Jeff, and they sign him at least to the practice squad or something, give him a chance. But
Yeah, and it's
his
really
time looks done at the moment.
yeah, and I think it's amazing that you just mentioned the XFL because today the XFL announced that the XFL rookie draft will be held on Friday, June 16th. And basically, the pool of players is any player that would have been eligible for the 2023 NFL draft that was not drafted. The Rock came out today and said that they'll be expanding rosters to 90 players for right now. This is going to be a huge deal because the XFL's never made it to year 2 in any of its iterations. They've either folded up during year 1 during the pandemic, or they folded up after year 1 in the early 2000s. The XFL, now that they're expanding rosters, having a rookie draft, I just think that this iteration of the XFL is actually going to work. I think that the NFL and XFL partnership is huge because you've seen how many players the last few weeks have been signed from the XFL to the NFL that I don't believe that those players would have been signed otherwise. Now, Alex, I know you're a huge fan of the XFL. Did you watch the XFL championship game?
I did not. I have a young baby. I didn't
Wait,
get a
you
chance
have
to. Did you?
priorities? You have
Yes, I
priorities?
do.
It was actually a pretty good game. I actually watched the fourth quarter of it because, as you know, the DC Defenders were down 9 to the Arlington Renegades. And in the XFL, there is a 9-point play. So you can score a touchdown and get a 3-point conversion in the XFL. So I did watch up until the last unsuccessful attempt. But the 4-6 Arlington Renegades are the first XFL champions. So we have a team with a losing record that came on and decided to win this championship.
Truly riveting stuff from the XFL. And what else is riveting to you fans out there is the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast. We have completed this episode, and we want to thank you for giving us a listen, shooting us a comment every now and then, downloading an episode, sharing to your friends. Please continue to do so. Please do so if you haven't. We enjoyed our time with you today.
Yeah, and as always, you can find us with our handle N2EFantasy on Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Please give us a follow. Until next time, take care of yourselves and remember, it's truly never too early for fantasy football. Thank you again.
Goodbye, all you football fanatics.